Yep. Good evening, everyone. So yesterday I given overview on events. So shopping. Yep. We discussed what is event, how events are used. I uploaded one document also. Events. If you still want more information about JavaScript events, I will upload a JavaScript events document also, so that all those JavaScript events you can try in your Angular. Mouse, keyboard, different types of events. I will upload a JavaScript document. Check those events, try them. Now, while working with events, one more very important you need to understand here is about how to deal with, how do we work with custom events. Custom events. This is important. Events all are same like JavaScript, but here you need to know custom events. Custom event means we can create an event like click, like change. We can create our own events. Now the question is, why do we need our own events? Why do we need to create our own events? How they work actually? Why we have to create our own events? Because actually custom events are nothing but custom events are user defined events. They are user defined events. So you can create an event. Why we need these custom events? Usually custom events are required while designing components. Custom events are required while designing components. When you are designing components, custom events are required for those components. For example, already we learned how to design components. So we will see why they are required actually. Suppose we designed one, we will have some tables. Suppose generally we have employee component. So we have products component. So we have students component, something like this. So employee component have some employee data, student component have some student data. That means every component actually works with certain data. That means products component, employee component, student component, they have their own data. So what is the concept here is, they are working with their data. Employee data is different, products data is different, student data is different, but all these require one common things. Like every employee data needs filter, every employee data needs sort, every employee data needs pagination. That means if there are many records, page wise displaying. So if every data requires these, we will not design this for every data. That is risky. That means for employee data, you design employee filter. For employee sorting, you design separate. For student sorting, you design separate. No, it doesn't happen like that. Generally, what happens is, suppose everywhere we need pagination, then we design a component called, we will design a component called pagination. We design a component called pagination. In that, there will be previous 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and next, like this page buttons will be there. Now what we do is this pagination component we want to use for employee, then we integrate that here. For employee data, it will be working. For student product data, it will be working. Student data, it will be working. That means here we are reusing a component. That's okay. But here, when we use in employee component, employee data must be connected to this. And when you are using products data need to be connected. Every data don't have 6 records, 6 pages. Employee data have 1 page, products data have 4 pages. And not only that, when you click on this first button, it should get employee data. And when you click on the first button, it will be products data. That means this component is used in another component, and it is working for that component, working for that data. That means now we need to design a component which can be reused. That we can already do. We design Netflix example. What we done in Netflix example, we designed a component, inside component another, header, main, footer, and all like that. We also already saw reusing of register component. But not only reusing, that register component should work on register button click, it should fire up some functionality. Using a component in another component, that is first job. And making the component use the data of existing component, that is another challenge. So that means now here 3 points are there. That means 3 challenges are there for developer. One, how to configure a component in another. How to configure a component in another component. This already we achieved. Now here another challenge is how to transport data from parent to child. Who is parent? Employee component. Who is child? Pagination. We need to send data from employee to pagination, then pagination identifies that you need 2 pages, you need 4 pages, like that. We need to transport data from parent to child. We need to transport data from child to parent. That means when user clicks page number 3, it should get 3rd page records and display in the component. That means here the hierarchical level is like this. That means in employee, what happens is here we need to get the data from here, right? That means we need to get the data from here. From parent to child, we need to send the data. From child to parent, we need to send the data. That means now when user clicks on 3rd, it have to change the page number 3. Is there any event for changing page numbers? There is no event for changing page number. You have click event, you have on change event. On change event is not changing page number, it is changing value. Then how you change a page number when user clicks on the button? Is there any event like that which can change page number? No. Then how it will work? We have to write our own event. That means we need to design a change page event. That is not there in JavaScript history. There is no change page event. We have to create an event and we can use that event. So we can create custom events. Why we need custom events? When you are designing custom components, they need custom events. Custom components means we need custom events. So for that, we have to learn how to design these custom events. And almost every Angular interview at fresher or experience level, these questions are common. How Angular transports data from one component to another. How data is transported from parent to child. How data is shared from child to parent. How data is shared from one component to another. You attend 100 Angular interviews, 99 interviews, these questions will be there. Compulsory, mandatory, because this is the primary concept in Angular application. Because designing is not important. Functionality is also important. That means you designed a component in another component. Now how you will share? I will tell this is one point, right? I will tell you another example to make you understand. Means the scenario. For example, you see, we are developing single page application. We are developing single page application. Usually it will be like this. This is which component? This is index component, right? Now in this index component, I am using a login component, means another component I am showing here. This is a login component. Now what happened? User has logged in, user ID logged in. Automatically when login is success, what will happen? We will maintain a profile photo here and we will put that user ID here. Am I right? We will maintain a profile photo there and we will put the user ID here. That means the data of user ID is transported from child component to parent. Right? That means login is a child component. Login success, that component disappears. But the data of that login is used by your parent. At the corner, it says you signed in successfully. And your profile. And there will be an option sign out. In single page, actually how this happens earlier, we will have a separate login screen. From login screen, you will navigate to another screen. In that screen, we will display. But in single page application, everything happens in one screen. Everything happens in one page. Earlier, how we do? Separate login page. User enters user ID, password. If login is success, we will take him to welcome page. In that welcome page, we will display that username. That is easy. Every web developer knows the technique. It's a very simple, silly concept of web designing. That how to transport data from one page to another. People use query strings and all for that. Session, states. Every web developer knows it. But the challenging is in single page application. How you will transport from a lower hierarchy to higher, higher to lower. This requires good knowledge of JavaScript closures. If you have learned any technology which is related to OOP, how to share data between a outer class to inner, inner class to outer. This is the challenging one in object-oriented approach. And this, to achieve this, Angular have so many things. We need to learn that. Let's see how this works. That means the first thing you need to understand is three things we will achieve now. What are those three basic things to achieve? First, how to configure a component in another. After that, how to transport data from parent to child. After that, how to transport data from child to parent. These three levels we will see. Then we will achieve the concept we are looking for. Let's do that. First, I am creating components like this. To make it simple in handling, let's add components. I am adding the components like this. Open the components in terminal. Yeah. ng generate component. One is parent. Skip test. Okay. I'm adding a parent component. Let's add another component. ng generate component child. Skip test. I'm adding a parent and child component. Let's first understand the hierarchy. Then we will implement in an example. Generate child hyphen skip test. Yeah. We have two components. One is parent and child. Okay. Let's start with the parent. We are starting with the parent component. And in index, app parent. Yeah. Now this is the parent component. Let's go to the parent component. And HTML page. Let's design here. So class, so container fluid. Yep. So be margin 2 and padding 4 and BG dark, text white. Okay. Here we'll keep a heading. This is parent container. So this is parent component. Okay. Let's add this and see here. So localhost. Yeah. This is parent component. We have a parent component defined. Let's keep a little style height as some 400 pixels. That's fine. This is the parent component we have. Okay. Next. Now we will design another component, child component. So I will go and add child component, and here I will keep a div. So class container fluid and margin 4 and padding 4 and BG light, text dark. Okay. And here I will give a heading. So for style child component. Okay. That is the component we are having. Now I want to access child component inside parent component. That's a simple thing, already we done. Let's go to the parent component, and here how to access by using its selector. That means we have to use app child. That means you can access the parent and child component here. So a component can be accessed in another component. This already we done. Already we know this approach, right? Now the concept here is how do we transport data from parent to child? That means some data is present in the parent component which we need to transport to child. We need to transport data from parent to child. For that is the first level we need to achieve, right? How we can do? You declare anything in a parent component is not accessible to child. Anything you declared in a parent component is not accessible to child because parent component is a separate class, child component is a separate class. And the members of one class are not accessible to another class. That is a very basic thing. You are accessing a component in another component. So this is only design wise. This is only design wise. Technically, you are not using any aggregation technique. I hope you know what is aggregation in OOP concepts, right? Aggregation means you can access the members of parent class in child class. So by creating an object of that class, that mechanism is called as aggregation. Another concept is inheritance. You can use inheritance or you can use aggregation. Here we are not doing anything of that. Then how do we send data from one component to another, right? So we'll do one thing. In the parent component, I will keep a button here. I will say send message to child. I just created a button here. So, and let's say class BTN. So send, BTN primary or simply light. Okay. This is send message to child. When this button is clicked, I want to send some message to the child component, which is completely a different one. How you transport data from this parent to child? Let's see. For that, so many concepts are involved in this. In order to accept data coming from parent, there must be someone to catch the data in child, right? If parent is sending some data to the child, there must be someone in child to collect the data. That means child components need a property that is used to access the data from the parent and store. From parent component, you are sending data to child component. Then there must be some property in child component which is ready to collect the data and store. So let's do that first. That means in child component, we need a property. That means what I am saying here, I'm saying that there must be some property here ready. So this property is expecting data from parent and it can store. Understood? That means we need a property in child component which can store the data coming from the parent. That is the first thing you need to do. Okay. Let's do that now. Let's go to child component TS file. In child component TS file, we will create a property. So public property is message child. We will write reasonable message from parent, because child is expecting message from parent. So, and it is a string type, and initially it is empty. Nothing is there. Remember, you can send any kind of data, a string or a number or a boolean or an object or an array. Any kind of data can be transported from one component to another. I'm just starting with string. Later, we will use other type of data also. Okay. So now parent component message will be stored here in the child. So child component have a property called message from parent. And this message we will display in the child HTML. Just below this, we will put a paragraph and we will display that message. What is it? Message from parent. We will use this. That means we will display that message there below. Below the heading, we will display. Currently it is empty. So below this child component, that is empty. Nothing is there. So currently it is empty. Now, when user clicks button, this button, some data, some message must be sent to child component. Now child component have a property. What is that property? Message from parent. It is a property. Just like button have value property, text box have value property, image have src property, our component have a property called msg from parent. Understood? That means button is a component. Button have value, button have type, button have name, button have id, image have name, image have id, image have src, image have width, image have height. These are all properties of image component. Similarly, our component have a property called message from parent. Now see here, go to parent component. This is our component. Our component is like a button or a text box we are using here. What property it is having? How to access property? We will put property binding technique. Property binding square brace. In that, what is the property? What property our component is having? The property name is message from parent. It is having a property called message from parent. But you observe here, now Angular is saying that I cannot bind anything to your property because I don't recognize this as a property in child. That means it is saying that you are trying to use some property which I don't know. But we created this property. You observe in the child component, there is a property called message from parent. But Angular is saying that I don't know this. Angular is saying that I don't know the property name you mentioned. I don't find this property in your component. Actually, it is there. You see, it is there. Then why Angular is unable to find this? Angular is unable to find this because we learned module system. Remember? In TypeScript, we learned module system. Are the members of module available to other modules? Are the members of a module available to other modules? No, we have to export them now. If I want to use in another module, we have to export them. We already learned module system in TypeScript. In a module, you design something. It is not simply accessible in another module. A property you designed in a component, it is not accessible in another component. Then how to make this property accessible outside this scope? To make the property accessible outside this scope, we have to mark this with a directive called input. We have to mark with a directive called input. Now it is available outside this scope. Input because it can accept input from external source now. Input means it is ready to accept input from any external component, external source. And this input is a member of Angular core library. You have to define here input. But your IntelliSense automatically takes it, no worry. If doesn't takes, you have to check manually. You have to first import input. And you have to mark it. Now try. Now let's go to parent component and here try in the square brace. You see message from parent is available now. Am I right? Message from parent is available, but it is expecting a string. I am sending an empty string currently. Now this message from parent is known. Previously it is unable, right? How you can make a custom property? You can design a component with custom properties. Custom properties are designed by using input. If you don't use input, they are not accessible outside. You have to mark them as input. We have to mark that as input. So if I don't mark that as input, immediately you see I remove this marker. Input I am removing. I am removing this marker. input I am removing, then automatically here it gets an error saying that there is no property called message from parent. Now we need to define with input. Now it is ready. It is accepting data. Now on this button click, we want to send some message here. On the button click, we want to send some message into that location. Let's write where we have to write in parent component. That means let's go to parent component TS. Here we will write a method. What is the method? The method is button click. That means I will say send click. Okay. On send click, what we have to do is we need to send some message. We need to send some message. I will put here simply first this public message is a string type and it is empty. There is an empty message. Now when send click happened, this .msg you have to display hello from parent. This message we want to send. We want to send. Now this message we will attach to here. We will send that message. That means into the component we have to send that. How do we send? We have to send MSG. MSG, we have to send that MSG. That means this message is coming from which component? Parent. From parent component, we are sending data to child. When to send that? On button click. That means we have to use click. On click, we have to call the method. What is it? Send click. What send click will do is it will send some message into this, and that message is passed to child, and the child property will collect that message. Am I right? It will collect that message and it will display the message here. It will display the message here. Now let's see here. I click send message to child, then it will display there hello from parent. Now we are successfully transporting the data from the parent to child. We can send any kind of data like that. Any kind of data we can transport. Currently, I am just sending a string. You can send an object or an array or any kind of data, we can do that. So this is transporting data from parent to child. To transport data from parent to child, there must be a property in child which is ready to accept data from parent. And every property cannot accept data from parent. If a property have to accept data from parent, it must be marked as a input. It must be marked as input. Right? That is important. So here, what are the consequences to understand here? So first thing is actually step 1. That means to handle the custom events. The first step is accessing. So this first step is accessing a component in another component. Accessing a component in another component. So this we can do by using the selector. That means we have app parent. This is the component. In this app parent, just syntax I am defining here. We have to access child component. Then what we have to do is, this is parent, right? And to do that, just inside this, we will just configure as app what child, app child. Just the hierarchical order I am showing. So accessing component in another component, that is done by using this hierarchy. This is the hierarchy we have to use. Second step is step 2. Second step is transporting data from parent to child. For this, so many consequences are there. Means so many points are there. First point is you have to configure a property in child component that can collect data from parent, right? That means here I am giving public message from parent, and it is a string type and it is initially empty. Now important here is every property of child component is not suitable to collect data from parent. Then who is suitable? So the property which is marked with input directive, can access can access the parent data. That means now syntactically how you define at the net input and public message from parent, and it is a string type, and we configured. And very important, input property can be any type. That means it can be a primitive or it can be an non-primitive type. Any type of data you can transport. Now very important is this is basic. That means how we define, how we configure transporting data from parent to child. For that you need this. And another point is child component can configure property binding. So and access data from parent. Child component can configure property binding and access data from parent. That means how it uses app child, and here message from what? Parent, and is equal to, it is expecting a string type data. That's how it can manage, how we can define. So that means we have to configure that property, and into that property we need to send the data. This is the approach of transporting data from the parent to child. Remember, if you cannot handle this concept of Angular, you can't, I am frankly saying, you will fail all your Angular interviews. Means that is perfect concept. If you cannot handle this concept, you are not Angular developer. You will fail every Angular interview. Because in every Angular interview at any level, questions will revolve around this concept only. Majority of questions will revolve around three concepts. One, custom events; another concept, life cycle; another concept is routing. Those three we will discuss. Major in single page application is this. That's the reason you should be very perfect in understanding and handling this in different scenarios, right? So this is a very easy concept of transporting from parent to child, nothing special. Just you need a property in child input, and you can simply send the data from parent to child, nothing special. Challenging is sending data from child to parent. That is challenging, because you know that already from higher scope to lower scope data accessing is easy. You learned JavaScript functions. Outer function values can be accessed in inner, but inner function values are not accessed outer. That is the challenging. For that, what you do in JavaScript? Don't know. What is the technique used in JavaScript to transport data of an inner function to outer function? The technique is called function closure. By using function closure technique, we manage this. Function closures. I told you na fetch we discussed. Do you know what is fetch known as? Fetch is known as promise, JavaScript promise. If anybody asked you like what promises you worked in JavaScript, tell me one major one. Fetch is the major promise. And the closures, promises, closures, these are important, right? So this requires a challenging one. Let's see, first level we achieved. Okay, let's send some other type of message and see. Where is this? This is child component. Na? For child component also I will give some height. Style height as 300 pixel, right? Okay, so 250 pixel enough. Now that is fine. Now it is sending message here. We will send some other data. To send any another data, suppose I want to send an object or I want to send an array, then there must be in child component, you must declare another input and public. What is this? For example, product details. Product details is an object type which contains name is a string and which contains price, which is a number, and it is an empty object as of now, where name is an empty string and the price is an empty number 0. That is the default data. Am I right? That is the default data we have. Means I created an object type product details and this object type is currently empty. For example, now let's go to child. Here I will create a simple data list, data term name. How do we get the name? We need to display product details dot what name. Another data term is price. And what is the product details? Here we have product details dot what price. That means we are presenting their empty is there. Now when I click on send message, I need to send a message as well as products data. I want to send some products data to child component from parent. Okay, let's go to the parent component TS now. Here we will create a public product object, right? This object contains name, string type, and price, what type? Number type. To avoid this concept of rewriting the code, you can better create a contract. We learned, na? To avoid rewriting of this, you can better create a contract, and that contract you can implement because we need to use the same in different components. Then better you create one contract and implement that contract. You know already that, right? So here we need name. Name is currently empty and price also currently 0. Now when the button is clicked, we have to send that. So this dot product, it will have name as some Samsung TV, and it will have some price is some price number. This data we are transporting when send is clicked. That means when send button is clicked, it is transporting the data here. So where is that name? Some problem in that. What is it? Data is not coming. Let's check the reference. Child component. Acha, we need to send that now. That means in child component, where is it? Parent. Yeah, here we need the data to be passed. Na? What is it? Product details. Into product details, it is expecting an object. What is that object? Product object. That product object contains that data, right? Now we have two properties in child component. One is message from parent, another one product details. Now you see when I click on send message, it should get that and display. That means we are transporting the message and we are transporting the data. Any kind of data, you can send any kind of data there. Right now we need to configure the property. Into that we have to pass. This product object carries the data from our parent component to child. Right? And the child component is collecting it and it is displaying. You see, child component is collecting the data and it is displaying the data here. Right? This is the first level how it works. Now let's see the second level, which is complicated. How we can send the data from this component to other component. That means child component to parent. Now you can simply drop when you are sending from parent to child. You don't need much effort. You drop, it will go down. But to send up, you need more power. You need to throw it. That means you need to throw the value outside this scope. Then only it will go. That means you need a rocket with a lot of power to get out of the orbit. Then it goes to space, means certain layer of earth. Then you don't need power. It is ready. It smoothly moves. You need more power to push this out of the scope. That means you need to kick the value outside the child. Then it goes flying outside the child and parent will catch it. That means you need forcibly somebody to trigger out. And that is called, we call as, to send data from child to parent. We need step 3. Step 3 is transporting data from parent, from child to parent. To transport data from child to parent, what you need here is, so you need an event emitter. You need an event emitter. This event emitter can emit the value outside the scope. That means you need some extra effort. So from parent to child, it smoothly comes in. But child to parent, you need to kick out from that scope. Then we need a special emitter. Emitter is used to emit the value. Very important, every angular event is derived from event emitter. Every angular event is derived from event emitter. That means, what is on click? Is it angular event? No, it is JavaScript event. What is angular event? Angular event is click. It is of type event emitter. Understood? It is of type event emitter which maps to on click. That means you are not directly using browser event. You are using an angular event. This angular event triggers the browser event. So this angular click is not JavaScript event. Click is angular event. JavaScript event is on click. Browser understands which one? JavaScript event only browser understands. Browser don't understand click. Browser understands only on click. Then who emits this click and maps to the on click? That is done by whom? Event emitter. Every angular event is derived from event emitter. If anybody asked in interview what is the base for events in Angular, event emitter is the base. All Angular events are of type event emitter. They are derived from event emitter. So if you want to create your own event, it is also of type event emitter. That means when you want to create your own events, it must be of type event emitter. Okay, let's do this now. And very important here is how the event emitter emits the value. That means what you can do is, that means syntactically you can write like this. Syntactically public. So custom event, it should be of type event emitter. And very important, event emitter is a generic type. Generic type means it can emit any kind of data depending on situation. You can make it emit string, you can make it emit number, you can make it emit object. Generic type, that means you can define generic type. So, and very important, that emitted value, whatever you emitted, that emitted value must be somewhere stored in memory. Then only you can access in another component now. That means whatever the value you emitted, that must be somewhere stored in the memory. Then only you can access in another component. So it needs a new means dynamic memory allocating operator. It needs a dynamic memory allocating operator, which what type? Event emitter type. Event emitter type memory is allocated. Why you need to allocate memory for event? Because it needs to store data. Whatever values you emit through this event, those values need to be stored. Then obviously every custom event needs a memory. What about click, on change, blur like events and all? They are already using browser memory. They are already using browser memory. Right now your events needs a separate memory because you are custom events. Browser don't know your events. Browser needs a memory for these events. That means we need to allocate a memory. Now how to access? Now the point here is, how do we define these events? How do we define these events? That means events are configured by using what? Events are configured by using event binding technique. We learned event binding yesterday. That means now we have app child, right? App child, how it uses property binding square brace, right? That means in the square brace, it will use the property name. How it uses the event property will have value. How it uses the event parenthesis. In parenthesis, custom event. Understood? And what this custom event maps to? Event is a function pointer. Na? It will map to a method name. Understood? Property will get the value and custom event maps to a method, because event is a function pointer. Yesterday we discussed that it uses a delegate mechanism. It is a function pointer. So event should always point to function. Event should always point to function, whether it is a custom event or whether it is an predefined event. It should always point to the methods. And properties are pointing towards the reference of values. Properties are values, events are methods. That is how we configure. This is little complicated now. Let's see. And one more important point here. Another important point is, custom events are not accessible outside scope. Again, they are not accessible outside scope. That means now you write like this, immediately it says I don't know this event, because you are trying to use outside. Then it says I don't know this event. So here, what is the role of event? Collecting value or emitting value? Event point is emitting the value. Property concept is collecting the value. Then very important is event emitter. Event emitter emits the value by using output directive. Event emitter will emit the value by using output directive. Now your interviewer have lot of scope of questions here, like some interviews they ask what are input output directives. Some interviews they ask how transport data from parent to child, child to parent. All are related to one concept only, but the way of questions may change. In many interviews they ask what are input and output directives in Angular. Input and output directives in Angular are used for transporting data between parent and child. How data is transported between parent and child? By using input output properties. How custom events are defined? Event emitter, right? What is the base for events in Angular? Event emitter, right? Now another question here is how to collect the value from event memory. Event allocated memory. In that memory some data is stored. How to collect that? Yesterday we learned how to collect event information. Remember the event related details are collected by using event argument $event. Am I right? What is the role of $event? Collecting information about event. Whatever data is stored in the event memory, that data can be collected by using event argument. And what is the default argument we learned? $event. So a custom event triggers memory, stores some data in memory. That data you can collect and use by using $event. That is the point. So here a lot of work is there to transport data from child to parent, right? Let's see how we can do that. So now the concept here is in the child component. Let's go to child component HTML. Here we will put a button. So class btn dark, and here we will say, so message to parent. We'll put a button here, message to parent. Now when I click the first button at the top, it will send data from parent to child. When I click this button, it should send some data from here to parent. It should send some data from child to parent. From child component to parent component, data need to be transported. Let's see how we can do that. And who can throw the data? A custom event only can throw the data, right? Or a custom event is required which can trigger the data out, emit the data out. So we will go to child component. We will create one custom event. To create a custom event, we need to import two things. One is event emitter, another one is output. We need two things. First, we need to create a custom event. How to create the custom event? We have to use @output public your custom event name. So custom event name I will use as child component click. Child component click. That is the event name, like on click, on change. Child component click is the event. How it becomes an event? By implementing event emitter. It is a generic type. You have to tell what data it should emit. You can emit any kind of data. String, number, object, anything. Same like parent we have seen. I will initially use string. Later we will send other type of data. Now we will allocate the memory. New event emitter. What type of memory? String type memory need to be allocated. It is compulsory to allocate memory for it. Otherwise, we can't store the data. So now the custom event is ready. Now let's try using this. But important is when it will emit, what it will emit. When it should emit this data and what data it should emit. This also we have to mention now. You created event, fine. What should it emit? String. What string? And when it should emit? When it should emit? When user clicks this button. When user clicks this button, the custom event should emit a value. That means for this button, you have to write a click event again now. Understood? That means let's write a click event for this button. For child component, this parent button is there. Here we are writing an event. What is it? Click. Here we will say send click. Okay. This send click we will write here. So public, what is the method? Send click. On send click, it is a void type. Yeah. On send click, this event should emit some value. Then we have to access that event. This dot child component click. It is an event dot. We have emit method. Emit what? It is expecting string as a value. You can emit a string. What is the string? You can directly put a string. You can store in property and access it. I will directly put a string. This is hello from child. Understood? This string is emitted. Now who have to catch this? Who have to catch this? Parent component. Na? Parent component have to catch this data which is emitted by this child. Right? That means now this event, child component click event. Let's go to parent component. And this is app child. In app child, two properties are there. One is message from parent, another one product details. Now how to bind event? Events are binding in a parenthesis. You see our event is there. This is custom event, like click, like change, like blur. We created our event, and this event should be pointing towards a method. Events always point to a method. So what is the method? In parent, there must be some method which can collect this data. Whatever emitted by this event, in parent, there must be some method. Let's go to the parent. In the parent, we will create a method. What is the method? So collect data. Am I right? Or collect message. Collect message is the method. This method have to collect the data emitted from that particular event. From that particular event. That means now this event is pointing towards, what is it? Collect data. This is the method. What is it? Collect message. Yeah. Collect message. This is the method. Now, this event data is passed into this method by using $event. Na? $event is used to send the data of event to that particular method. Now that means now this collect message should collect event argument, which is what type? String type. And it should display somewhere in parent. To display somewhere in parent, there must be some property here. Na? That means in parent, we will put one property. What is that property? Public message from what? Child. It is what type? String type. It is empty. And in this, we will collect the data. That means this dot message from child is coming from E. We will collect and store it here. Whatever event is emitted, we will collect that and we will store that here. And this we will display in parent component, where in parent component, just above the heading we will do. Above the heading or somewhere, I will put a paragraph, and here we want to display. What is it? The message from child. So message from child. This is what we want to display. That means now what happens here? You click on this. From parent to child, data will come. You click on this now. From child to parent, the message will go. That means we are transporting data from child to parent. We are collecting in parent and we are displaying that. We are displaying that. This is transporting data from child to parent, right? That means this component is emitting. So we collected that emitted data there and we are using it. This all requires yesterday's concept. If you miss yesterday, today is like Christopher Nolan movie. Understood? I told you now already. Christopher Nolan movie, you know it, right? It is like Christopher Nolan movie, Interstellar, Inception, Matrix. You will clap for every scene, but you don't understand anything, right? Interstellar movie, people watching on IMAX, whistling, clapping for every scene. At the end of movie, they asked, what is story? It will be like that. Understood? Right? Because even space scientists also don't understand his movies, Christopher Nolan movies. That's so complicated things, but visually grand, great. You can't understand anything, but you will be enjoying the complete movie. Yeah, if you missed yesterday's session, today's session will be like that. Right? Because event argument, event handler, how to collect event arguments, these all points yesterday we detailedly discussed. And that is what here you are tested in almost every Angular interview. You put 10-15 years experience as a software developer. This is what you are tested in interviews. That means they will ask the complete architecture behind transporting data from parent to child, child to parent, output properties, event emitters, event arguments, event behavior, architecture behind that, which pattern it is using, event emitter uses which pattern, software design pattern, observer. Yesterday we discussed that. What is the mechanism behind this delegate function pointer mechanism, right? And what is input for collecting the data? What is output for emitting the data? So collecting data from parent to child is easy, but from child to parent, it is complex, right? So you can have any number of events. A component can have any number of properties, any number of events. That means for a button, how many events you can write? Your wish. You can write mouse over, you can write click, you can write double click, your wish. You can define any kind of events. So suppose I have to write another event for this, then we can define another one. So another, what is it? Output. And here public, I will say child component click for object, something like this. Click object, so child component object click, something like this I given. Or I will write like child component hover, right? So over. Or child component change, like this I am writing. You can use anything. Now what it should be of what type? Event emitter type. And what it can send any type of data. You can keep an object, you can keep a string, any type, and is equal to new event emitter. And what type? Any type. Now the memory is allocated. Now you can configure, that means you can emit any kind of data. Suppose I will use here this dot on send click, this dot child component change. It should emit an object now, right? I am sending an object, name, some TV, and price, something like this. Now this data to be collected in your parent component and be used there. That means here we have to define another event. Already one event is working. We have to define another event. What is that event? Child component change. So here we will use collect object, right? Into that we have to pass dollar event. And here in the parent, we need another method. What is it? Collect object. Collect object or OBJ. So I given that collect object. Yeah, collect object. Collect object event, what type? Any type. And this must be stored somewhere. Suppose I am creating here public, so obj, or this is any type and it is an empty object. And here we are collecting that this dot obj is equal to whatever E is sending. Now that obj have name and price which you can display anywhere you want. That means in the parent I am displaying here a div. So we have name and name is coming from, so this is coming from obj dot name. And here we have a line break, we have price, it is coming from obj dot price. That means we are sending different type of data here. Message to parent, it will send that. Message to child, it will send this. We are transporting any kind of data from one location to another. There can be any number of events. So this is custom event, but this is not the example. This is just a syntax to make you understand. Now we will implement this in an example. This is not example. This is just, I showed you the process, how it works. Now we need to implement this in a real world example where exactly it is used. Right, in a real world scenario, how it works. Right, that's what we need to implement now. That we'll see tomorrow. Right, first you need to practice this. I will upload this entire code, parent and child. Then we will do that. And mostly this Sunday we will have a session morning. I will let you know the timing tomorrow. Right, this Sunday morning we will have a session because next topic needs one complete session time, which we cannot complete in 1 hour. Right, next topic. And if I break the topic, you can't understand, confuse. That's the reason for that we need to spend at least 2 hours, 3 hours time. And that I will plan for Sunday. Okay. So Sunday we will have a session. Mostly it will be at 9 a.m. Sunday 9 a.m. we will have a session. Right. So, and in that session we will discuss one major concept, that is life cycle of Angular. Right, we have to finish that in complete session, then only we will have a good clarity on that. If we break that, then it is difficult. Right, then Sunday we will discuss about that. Monday, so as usual, so Sunday same continuation topic. So tomorrow first I will give you example of this. After that we will continue. Okay, I will give you one example how this is used for real world. Right, tomorrow we'll continue then. Okay.